What is going on, 242? We gotta talk. What is going on? Marvin Gaye sang those lyrics so many years ago, talking about civil unrest, racism in our country. And he said, "What's going on?" And here we are in 2020, and whatever's going on, it seems like it's still happening. And we shouldn't be surprised by that as a church, because what we're seeing is sin. And we live in a sinful world. But what we're also seeing is egregious. And you and I watching this video know that there's no place for racism at 242 Community Church, and there should be no place for racism in our world. And you and I both want to be an advocate to address this issue, and we want to be part of the solution to this issue. Now, the question is, what is the best way to go about this? Now, this may sound cliche, and I get it, but I can just tell you as a pastor, almost every single time when I ask myself that question, what is the best way to go about something, bringing about change in society, bringing about change in this world, I really say it's the way that Jesus did it. The way that Jesus did it is the best way. And so when we're in our country right now in a season where we're seeing all these news stories and these murders, and I've heard police officers call this murder, so I don't think it's even hyperbolic. I think the situation got out of hand, and the question is, why did it get so out of hand? And the answer is racism. Things don't escalate when people feel safe, but things do escalate when people feel threatened. And what we're seeing is people feeling threatened by people of different races than them, and situations escalating until the point where people are being killed. And so we need to stop that. But I would suggest that the way to stop that is not by re-escalating back at the situation. It's about being better. It's about showing people a better way. And it's about expecting better from people. Now, you watching this might think, well, I'm not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body, and these cops need to be, absolutely brought down, and all these injustices actually brought down, and they will. I believe in the system that we have in place. I believe that the system will prevail, and I believe that the outcry has been heard and justice will be served through our legal system. So let me go back to that first part, where you and I say to ourselves, well, we don't have a racist bone in our body, and we would never do something like this. Because I think that's the first thing that Jesus says. Jesus is going to say, before you start worrying about the speck of dust in someone else's eye, look for the plank of dust in your own eye. And so really the first question we have to ask ourselves is, where do we have any unconscious bias that kind of shows itself for race? And be honest with ourselves. Do we feel uncomfortable when we're around people who look different to us? Do we feel threatened when we're in a community where the majority of people around us don't have the same skin color to us? Because if that's the way you feel, at least it's good that you can be honest about it. And out of that honesty, then you can start to say, but it's not true. What's true is we're all made in the image of God. What is true is that we're all loved. And what's true is the vast majority of all people, of all races, are good people. And the vast majority of all people do not harm other humans. And so what we need to do is just assume that that is the place and the posture for most everybody that we're around. And the second thing I would say is we need to stop worrying about who's racist and who's not racist and what do we do with racists. And really, we need to start, I believe, being on the solution side of this. And Jesus tells us what the solution side is. He tells us what the solution side is in John chapter 17, and it's one word, and that solution is unity. It's not getting rid of one race that's been dominant for a long period of time. It's not only listening to another race who's starting to be more vocally heard. What we need to realize is that we're all brothers and sisters in the image of God, that we all have worth and value in the image of God. And our number one strive should be towards unity with our brothers and sisters. Jesus also tells us that we have to love our enemies. Now, this is the hardest one to tackle for me, because the idea of any grace to anyone who does evil, it's harder for me to do than it was for Jesus, because I'm not perfect. But Jesus knows the outcome, and Jesus knows what's best. And he says to love your enemy. He says, do not repay evil with evil, but rather repay evil with good. Jesus says to let your good deeds shine before others so that they may see those good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven. The way through this is not burning down our cities and our communities. The way through this is acknowledging this is unjust and stating this will not be stood for, but then leading and loving through it well. And that's not easy to do in this time, but if you and I are serious about being ambassadors of Christ, especially in this season, then we need to show people how to lead through love in this time to bring about unity and reconciliation. But I understand this was egregious and it has to stop. And know as a church, we want to help facilitate more people acting more loving in a more unified way so these type of things don't happen in our communities, and hopefully it will spill out so to a point where these things will stop happening in our country. Church, I love you, and I really hope that you will be encouraged by this message, and I hope that we would be better men and women than what we're seeing on TV. Because here's what's happening. I believe this whole COVID thing just has everybody just volatile. Everybody's just right about the tipping point. And if any of us have character flaws, I believe those character flaws are coming out. If you have a twinge of racism in you, I believe we're seeing racism pour out. If you have a tinge of rage in you, I see people blowing up in shopping centers about masks versus no masks. If you have a tinge of greed, I see people who are not helping other people. I think the negativity that's in us is spilling out of us because we're not holding it together well. And I think what we need to do is just be honest about the planks in our eyes. And I think we need to be honest about what we need to do to be the church and to be individually more like Jesus, so collectively we could be the kingdom of God in this season. I love you guys, and I see you all later on.